Hello and welcome to the Expat Reality Podcast. I'm your host Annie.
And I'm your host Steve.
And in this podcast, we're going to explore the reality of living life as an expat in Australia and what it really means to feel like you belong.
Join us as we uncover the challenges and opportunities that expat life presents on the search for settled.
With our stories, tips and interviews, see us as your two friends to help you navigate expat life abroad. Just to let you know, this video podcast series is brought to you by the team at Auric Migration and Mobility. Now, Auric have helped us personally with my visa process to Australia, and we only know too well how difficult the entire process can be if you're doing it by yourself. They have also helped hundreds of our followers, and they're offering our listeners an initial assessment for free. Email them your visa situation, questions or concerns, and they will get back to you at no extra cost. Simply mention the Expat Reality Podcast when you email them at migration@auric.com. Auric is spelled AUREC. So that's migration@auric.com. Hi everyone and welcome back to the Expat Reality Podcast. I'm your host Annie.
And I'm your host Steve.
And before we get started today, we would just like to say if you guys can like and subscribe our podcast, because the more times you do that, the more we can keep this podcast going.
That's right. And we hope other people find us as well. And, you know, it's just good for everybody. We'll love you for it. Just give us a big thumbs up. Give us a review. Cheers.
There you go. So on today's podcast episode, we've got a really special guest with us today. We have the one and only Emma Weir with us today.
Woohoo!
Hello!
There goes the mic.
I just banged the mic. So if you haven't heard of Emma before, maybe you have. We actually interviewed Emma about a year ago on our podcast, on our website called londonersydney.com, and Emma shared her moving to Australia story. So we thought, what a better opportunity than to bring her on the podcast today so she can share her story about how she ended up moving to Australia. So welcome, Emma.
Hello, or should I say g'day? I still haven't worked out how to say that properly.
Steve?
6 years.
There are a few versions of g'day. There's a g'day mate. There's the g'day, and then there's the good day. And so you can choose the version that kind of suits you best. But go with what works for you is my general advice.
Yeah, I don't feel authentic enough. I feel like I'm being too try hard.
I can't say I've ever heard any Brits actually say good day before, but
No.
I know that when we did live back in England, you were the most Australian person I'd ever met, Steve. You were putting it out all the stops, weren't you? with your
Honestly, I
Australian
feel like I've
accent.
become like an honorary Steve Irwin when I go back to England. It just kind of feels a bit like that's my place. But, you know, the good days come out, you know, the how you goings come out, and I feel all Aussie. It just makes me feel like it's like I belong in Australia and England. It's kind of weird.
Did you? I don't know if I ever recall you saying about throwing a shrimp on the barbie, though.
Don't ever say that in front of an Australian. It's very embarrassing. And I'm sure that pretty much everyone will agree in Australia that that's a very, very bad idea.
Bad idea.
Not guilty. I haven't.
Emma, do you want to take us back to the beginning and tell us
Yeah.
your story? Like, how did you end up in Australia? When did you move here? Where did you move from?
Yeah, okay.
Start from the beginning.
Well, I think we've got something in common here, Annie, which is probably why we connected over Instagram originally, in that Brighton is where we were. So we lived in Brighton for 10 years before we moved over to Sydney. And that was 6 years ago this month, which I just can't believe. And like so many people, I think we just had a plan to pop over for a year. You know, we'll just go and see what it's like. And it was with my husband's job. So it was 2017. And he got a transfer, basically. He was working for a video games company, and he was having a bit of a rough commute and travelling from Brighton to Dublin. So on a Monday, he'd get on a train from Brighton, he would go to Gatwick, he'd jump on a plane, he'd go to Dublin, he'd stay there for 4 days and then come back on a Thursday night. And at that point, we had 2 kids, probably under 4. And so I was on my own all week with them. He was there. We were all just miserable, basically. And opportunity came up with the Sydney office, and we thought, God, it's too far, no. And then Brexit happened and all this kind of random stuff was happening, and it just felt like suddenly it was time for a change. It felt like a crossroads, I guess. So we packed up our things and left. And thinking about it now, I can't believe we did it. But it was really only going to be for a year or so in my mind. Probably longer for my husband. I think he always had the plan. He's always wanted to live in a hot country. Always.
And I think when just talking about that commute there, oh my God, that brings back so many memories of, as I have talked about
horror
before.
Commutes.
Yeah.
Leaves on the track. What is it with leaves on the track? What is it with the driver not arriving and stuff like that?
But even when you were just saying about that commute, and then you were like, he's getting on the train to Gatwick and then flying to, and I was like, I thought my commute was bad. And that was just into Victoria, which is like supposedly another half an hour from Gatwick. But
so just to clear things up, like I'm hearing like a video game-esque thing going on here. Are you able to elaborate on that at all, or what?
Yes, he was working for an American company that do the game League of Legends, a big online game.
Cool.
So he was working for them, which was an awesome job, really, really loved it. And the opportunity to come out here and work with the Sydney office, which was very much in its infancy. So it was a great job. And another great thing about it was that two of our really good friends from Brighton had already come out here to Australia to start the office. So we had a kind of connection. We weren't going to be over here completely on our own without anyone. We had a family here already that we knew. So that also made it really quite, like, ooh, okay. Yeah, it is.
I love the fact that you said that, your husband always wanted to go to a hot country. Now, should we just clear this one up about Sydney? That is it hot there all the time, or what does the weather really look like in Sydney?
Oh my gosh, we arrived from Brighton. We'd left -2 on a January morning, and we arrived in Sydney, and it was 42 degrees.
Wow.
And I honestly thought, what the hell have we done? I really did. Too hot. And then winter came, and it was like, oh my God, it's absolutely freezing. Like, oh, sorry, the cat's arrived. Oh, so our cat came from Brighton.
We've got a doggy, so we've got a dog and a cat. It's like it's an animal affair here.
We flew our cat, this is Boo. She came over from Brighton too, so she's a jet pet. Oh, she's very well travelled.
Gosh,
Go on.
So many questions already, like even just with the cat move, because I think so many people, they really worry about moving their animals over to not only to Australia, but probably to other countries as well.
We've been wondering like how to kind of deal with that, and how like what's the procedure, how long does it take, and how does it affect the pet? I mean, there's so many. Tell us all about it.
Well, we actually used a company called Jet Pets. And it was arranged through my husband's work. So when we said we'd relocate to Australia, we said, the cat has to come too. And they totally understood, and they arranged for her to go through all the procedures. So I think she was in quarantine I can't remember how long she was in quarantine for, but she had to have a certain amount of vaccines and jabs and things in the UK. And we actually had to leave before she was allowed to come. And thankfully, this lovely family moved into our house, which we've still got in Brighton, and they looked after the cat as well. They moved in, looked after the cat, and when it was time for her to come to Australia, she got picked up by the Jet Pets company, and they organised everything and looked after her. And then when she was able to come out of quarantine in Australia, she was then delivered to our door by Jet Pets.
Wow. And how was your cat when your cat came over? Was your cat traumatized, or
No,
just a normal same cat?
she was angry. She told us off and meowed around the house and meowed and meowed and meowed, and then just climbed up onto our lap and fell asleep.
Oh, wow.
Short protest followed by a sleeping session.
You kind of think that the animal's going to be super traumatized for, forever, really.
Obviously, Jet Pets is a bit of a holiday session, and by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, she was fine, but that was 6 years ago, and now she is 14. So the flight over from Sydney to WA, I'm jumping ahead here, she was not so happy about, but we'll come to that.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, wow. Gosh. And so it'll be really interesting to hear a bit more about this sort of move that you had. So tell us about that process between the job popping up and then deciding to move over. Like, what happened within that time frame?
Um, I guess actually were flown over to come and visit Sydney before we agreed to the move, which was again a real hashtag grateful. Um, we came over for a holiday because we'd never been before, so we came over. Kieran had the interviews. That's my husband, and we looked around at various places that we'd like to move to, and we had a relocation agent who drove us around Sydney and took us to all of the places that he thought, as an expat British family, we would like.
Oh, you have to tell us whereabouts was that?
Yeah, so Manly was one of them. There was a real kind of like, this is where those people that really love the beach want to go. And we decided that was too far away from the CBD. My husband was working in Pyrmont in Sydney.
It's a long commute.
And so we decided against that. We're like, we've just moved from the UK, or we're moving from the UK because of the commute. So let's not do that. And so we then kind of drew quite a small radius around, the CBD in Pyrmont and Sydney. And we ended up looking at lots of places in the inner west. So we ended up in Balmain. Nice. And right kind of on the harbour with the water. So we still felt quite far from a beach, but we still had the harbour, and we still had, the ferries going across the water. And
Balmain's great. I
love Balmain. Good vibes. I reckon it's probably probably the only suburb that I've probably seen in Sydney that does have that sort of English feel to it, in a sense, like that, like the sort of high street, and you've got your shops there, and there's something about that just really reminds me of England. And I don't know if I've seen that in other suburbs, really, that makes it that similar in a sense.
I know what you mean. It's got the slightly older architecture, and obviously not on the same level as the UK, but older Australian architecture and sort of that sort of villagey sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of pubs in Balmain.
Pubs.
There's even the London Hotel.
The London Hotel.
Isn't it a London Hotel in Balmain?
Oh, it's lovely there.
We've had one night out there.
Had a shandy or two there.
Yeah. One night. So that's what we settled on, and they also took us to Surrey Hills, which we didn't feel was very family folk. There was a school, and there was some family places, but in the end it came down to Balmain having that kind of villagey feel. It felt like you could walk to school, you could walk to the coffee shop, Kieran cycled to work every day. It was and there were a lot of expats, which it's crazy, isn't it, that you move all the way over here to then hang out with English people. But
it's nice to have a network, right? It's nice to kind of know that when you're there's some familiar sort of people with the same, experiences you've had that you can kind of connect with. So totally understand.
That's right.
And it's the same when Aussies go to England.
I think it's a thing though. Like when you move away, even though in your head you're like, I don't want to be around people from my own country. I want to immerse myself in the culture. But there's something very familiar and comforting and reassuring about it. And that's why expats do cling to each other, because you've got that sense of, it's almost like your extended family in a sense. So what made you decide? So in those few weeks when you came over to Sydney and you were relocation agents taking you around to all these different suburbs, sort of giving you a bit of a feel for the city, what made you sort of go, we want to do this?
Oh, it was just so beautiful. We came out in the October, and it was just that beautiful, beautiful time of year. The jacaranda trees, I'd never seen a jacaranda tree. That purple basically is why I moved. It's not really. But it just felt like an outdoor life. It felt like I've got two boys, so they are, I just wanted them to have more of we had a little tiny yard in Brighton. Oh, not a yard, so that's an Australian word. A little patio. And, we were living in Brighton, which obviously has the beach and has lots of parks and things. But in comparison to the amount of space in Sydney, I just couldn't believe that this was, one of the major city. So quiet and so clean. So
That's one thing I really noticed, like Brighton as well, because we were living back there. Yeah, I mean, just like random like rubbish just laying around. I was like,
Yes.
why is this? Why is this? And then you come back here and you're like, wow, it's super clean. Like, it's definitely something you notice.
And then you go to somewhere like Singapore, and then it's like a whole other world of
that's
cleanliness.
another level.
It's mad.
That's right. And also just the thought that we'd never get that chance again. We'd probably never have that chance to be moved across the world by a company, and why not give it a go? What did we have to lose? I think that's what it came down to. It was like, go and try it for a year. If we don't like it, then we'll come back. And that's, that's what we decided to do.
Can I ask though? I mean, because when you say that and it sounds perfect, what about, okay, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, but then you probably have family to consider and all that sort of stuff.
Your house.
And your house, all those considerations. Kids, how does that kind of play into that?
I think because we thought that it would probably only be for a couple of years, that it almost made the decision easier, because we just thought, we'll just take a chance. And I think we're those kind of people. We're quite casual and quite, give it a go, It didn't mean that saying goodbye to family was easy by any stretch. And that's still one of the hardest things. Telling my mum that we were moving and taking her grandchildren away was really hard.
I think that's the thing though, is when you, in your head, when you think, well, it's only temporary, so it's only for a few years, so it's like you probably have a very different outlook to it, rather than thinking this is forever. And that's probably something to sort of reassure other people who are considering moving to Australia, that it doesn't have to be forever.
It's not like a final thing. It's like, this is a chapter of your life, maybe.
Exactly.
That's exactly how we viewed it. We still have our house in Brighton, so we always agreed that we'd rent that out, which hasn't been a problem. That's all been good. And we thought we would come for a couple of years, and now we're 6 years.
Well, I was meant to be away for 6 months traveling, and that was really like be my 12th year this year.
There you go. So she can't get enough of it. So
she can't.
Oh, me. Well,
married an Australian, hey.
And
so, what about your kids? How did your kids take the move? Were they excited by it? Were they really sad about leaving all their friends?
They were both kind of too young, really, to know what was happening. We were pretty much their world, I suppose. My eldest had just started school in Brighton, so he'd only done about a term before we were then leaving. So that was fine. And my youngest was 2.5, so he was no idea what's happening. And so we didn't really kind of do the big goodbyes with family with them. It was like, we'll see them soon. And so they didn't have any idea, which I have to say would have been much, much easier. It was easier than people that are moving across the world with teenagers or, with older kids, because they had no idea.
Because I was going to say, I think it's probably, that's the easiest way to deal with it, especially when you go back to visit as well, when you're like, I'll see you soon. Because if you think in your head, like the last time I was in England it'll be 4 years this year. And last time I was there, I was thinking, I'll be back in next year. And if I'd known it was going to be 4 years until the next time, I would have been like, oh my God, this is really hard to leave.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's like most. You approach something with this final mentality, and it's kind of going to play out very differently, I think, than if you kind of treat it as you did, just kind of something momentary and stuff. Yeah.
So when you did move over, so with your relocation agent, what did they actually can you talk about the process in terms of what did they actually plan for you, and what did you have to plan yourself as well in terms of, finding a house and getting your stuff shipped over and anything else?
So they helped us find a house, and we had to secure it before we came to keep it, because the rental market was so tough, and God, even tougher now. We had to secure it, go back to the UK and pack up and then come back again. So that was about a month later. So they helped us get that sorted. We obviously had to organise all of our packing everything up and getting it all together, or, trying to get rid of stuff. God, that's the hardest thing, trying to, shed everything. And then they organised the actual shipping of that. So again, we were super lucky. They also helped us find a school. So that was good. Although we did turn up at the first day at school and they said that, no, we weren't actually at that school. So we sorted that out pretty quickly.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah,
What
we
happened
got
there?
we got there and they just said, no, you're not in the catchment area for the school, and so you can't come. And I was like, well, I've bought the uniform and I've had a letter from the principal, so I think we are here. And it was just that, annoying school receptionist gatekeeper person who decided that they were in charge and that I was some newcomer that didn't know what they were talking about.
My authority will be respected immediately.
Exactly, but that was a little bit of a panic when we first got here. But yes, they really helped us do a lot of things. My goodness, if you can move over with a company, highly recommend. And then, yes, we didn't have our furniture and everything, of course, because we moved over before all of that had then arrived. So we rented furniture for a while and just had some real basics. We rented beds and we rented sofas.
I did not realise you could do that.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
How did you find out about that?
I think, again, I think just our friendly Google. It was a bit of a Google search and just organised that. That really helped. And then we went to the library and we kind of borrowed toys for the kids. They had a toy library at the local library.
That's a good idea.
So good. It was great.
Yeah. So that was really good too. And then we just met people really quickly who were just like, oh, just, we can lend you that and we can lend you this. And yeah, we've just been really great neighbours.
Because I think with that as well, like a lot of people who move over, they have that problem of going, well, I'm moving over, but my shipping won't be, because it takes shipping takes
it takes
3 months or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do in between that time? So that's really fascinating that you're able to. What kind of stuff were you able to rent then? Was it like pots and pans, or how granular did it get?
There was definitely, I think, 6 years ago now, but I know it was definitely furniture. You could borrow all sorts of things, furniture-wise. And I think there were kitchen items as well. So we just borrowed everything.
Wow.
Shame I can't remember what they were called, isn't it?
I'm sure
We
everyone else
can track it down and do
Yeah.
it.
Down for sure.
But I mean, in your mind, because you're thinking like, well, okay, yeah, I've got to get my apartment sorted before I come back. So it's not like I can do that and then maybe rent somewhere furnished. But you're going to be paying double rent. So the whole renting furniture thing kind of really makes sense.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And now that since you've moved, would you have it? Say in another reality, if you had the money, would you have bought a house rather than renting when you first moved over? Because I get that question quite a lot from readers who are always asking me, oh, where should I buy a house? And I'm like, oh, maybe you should just rent first and just see which part of Australia you might be interested in rather than going straight into buy somewhere. So is that something you wish you would have just done straight away? Is just like, oh, let's just buy somewhere and then we don't have to spend money on renting?
No, yeah, no, I think I would have, we again didn't know if it was going to be our kind of forever place. We thought we'd like Balmain, and of course, starting the children at school somewhere also means you are a bit committed. You don't don't want to pull them out from over there and then bring them to here and then start a new school and then start. So I guess we were kind of in for a penny. What's that saying? In for a penny in for a pound.
Yeah.
We knew we'd be there for a while, but yeah, I was very much, no, we're going to rent and keep our house in the UK, and all this kind of just in case, I guess. How long are we going to be here for? We don't know, so let's just keep it quite temporary.
And so I'm really interested to know, after you did your holiday in Sydney, because obviously everyone knows that when you go on holiday, it's very, very different to when you're actually living somewhere. What was it like when you actually moved over? Did you have any regrets where you were like, oh my God, what have we done? Or were you kind of like, wow, this is actually better than I was ever expecting? What was going through your head at the time?
I think for the first 6 weeks of being back in Sydney, it felt it felt good. Still felt like a holiday, I suppose. But we were in a new area because we hadn't spent any of the holiday in the inner west. We'd been in Paddington. So that was still lots of discovery, I suppose, and that was good. But after about 6 weeks, I did start feeling quite lonely, and my husband had to go straight off to work. So we landed, he went straight to work. And so I was kind of on my own with the 2 kids, not knowing anyone, and school hadn't started at that point. So we hadn't really met anyone, and yeah, it was quite lonely to begin with. And there was definitely a, oh my God, what have we done moments for me. Not necessarily for my husband, and the kids didn't obviously know, but I did feel like, oh gosh, yeah, the holiday's over.
And do you have any, because I mean, that's something, I mean, a lot of people face moving to a new place is making friends and sort of finding your way. I mean, what sort of strategies, do you have any tips for any people when they're kind of in that situation? Like how do you make friends, and yeah, what did you do in your case?
School was the big thing for us. That was the game changer for me, particularly, and also being at quite a small school in Balmain as well. There's one entrance in, one entrance out. You kind of congregate with all of the parents, and we started on the first day of school with everyone else. So we kind of, it wasn't like we were the new people starting midterm. We were kind of there on day one. And you just met all these other kind of nice mums and dads, and there was, within a few days, I'd kind of met a few, been asked out for coffee or, that type of thing. It was had a really great community, and thank God for it. It was really a real moment of, I think it's going to be okay. Because I wasn't at work at that point. So my husband had his kind of work gang, I suppose. And it really, really was a lifeline, having met those other parents, those other families. And lifelong friends now as well. There's definitely a few people now. We've moved again, that I stay in touch with every week, and we still talk. And yeah, they were brilliant. I did join a choir as well. I joined a choir.
Oh, hang on now. Can you give us a couple of lines? Come on.
Yeah.
Can you please? Be great. We have to.
No.
You're saying a happy day. That's the first thing that came to my head.
Is that Sister Act?
Yeah, of course it is.
Oh,
Yes,
that's one thing
Sister
Annie doesn't
Act.
stop. It's Sister Act.
I love Sister
God, I
Act.
love that.
Can you do us a couple of lines?
Sister Act 2.
No. I can't. It's a pub choir. It's a pub choir.
Oh,
So
happy days. I don't even know, but I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, happy days. That's the one you said.
I saw you singing. You were singing. Where were you on your trip? You were singing with the band.
Oh, yeah. No, I do that all the time. But
Steve does it all the time.
I do have a bit of a habit of just randomly jumping in with people and just.
Oh, yeah, in Indonesia. And oh, my God, on the New Year's Eve, isn't it? And they were like, you have to come to the free dinner at the hotel. And we're like, all right, we'll go to it.
Oh, yeah.
And then they were singing really drab songs. And Steve was like, I want to go and sing.
It was like New Year's Eve, and they're playing like the most dreary covers you've ever imagined. It was like Metallica, like Fade to Black. All this sort of stuff. It wasn't cool. Anyway, so I was like, let's liven it up. And of course, Knock, Knock, Knock on Heaven's Door is of course they're going to know that. It's the king of dreary songs.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, let's mix it up. The name of the hotel was Menzel. So I thought, let's do Knock, Knock, Knocking on Menzel's Door. Next thing, and I'm up with the guys. We're doing a little number. But, you have to make these dreary moments come alive sometimes.
I remember at one point they had like a little break, and Steve was like, I'm going to go up and just start playing the guitar and start jamming. And I was like, don't think you can do that, Steve. It's not your guitar.
Yeah, you just never know. With unaccompanied guitars, it's an open invitation.
Emma could sing, and you could be on the guitar.
Well, there we go. But you still haven't given us a Sister Act line yet. Do we get one, or we don't get one?
No.
Oh.
Sorry.
Shame. I thought I was going to have like a proper.
No, that's just too embarrassing.
That's really cool though, like to meet people from doing something obviously you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Something that we say every weekend, we're like, that's it. Got to go and join these clubs like every week, not only to meet people, but for our mental health as well, just to be in sociable environments. Because I think, especially since COVID, like not most, but a lot of people are working from home, which at the beginning it was like, great, I get to work from home. I don't have to deal with that commute anymore. But then as time goes on, you're like, and the only people I'm talking to in the day is people through my screen or like We have like separate offices because we would kill each other, I think, if we're in the same.
I just don't think we could do the same office. I mean, I don't know. I just, no.
Some things need to be separated.
But I was going to say, Time Out, and they do those the articles they talk about Sydney are quite funny from time to time, because they say, 1 minute they're going, Sydney's the most unfriendliest city in the world, and the next minute they're saying Sydney's like the best city in the world to live in.
It's like coffee; they can never make up their mind whether it's good for you or bad for you.
Oh, who does the best coffee, Sydney or Melbourne?
Every 6 months, it's.
It just kind of goes round, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think as expats, so it can be really hard to sort of really feel comfortable and make that effort to really step out of your comfort zone, because when you're used to your home comforts and your friends and family have been around you for years, and suddenly you're in a new country and you're like, wow, I literally have to say yes to anyone who's asking me to do something. Or
that's a really good point, because I'm imagining you become more of a yes person. Like you just become a bit more open to doing things. As you're saying, I was invited to coffee. Like you might have been back at home thinking, oh no, look, got to do the washing, got to do my hair. I don't know, whatever excuse you make up. But if you're in another country, let's do coffee, let's do double coffee, let's do it every week.
Yeah.
And I think that really opens up a whole new world, and it changes your whole outlook and stuff. So
it does.
Yeah.
I think that is the answer, to say yes to every opportunity. It can be exhausting, actually. It's like, oh my God, can I talk for another hour to a stranger? Because it's different, isn't it, when you're talking to someone you never met before? You feel like you're a little bit on show, I suppose, and you want to say the right thing and make the right impression. But yes, I did lots of that, coffee meets and things. And I also volunteered. So at the school, there was, lots of fundraising things going on. And at that time, I was working in social media, and someone mentioned to the board, oh, she can do social media. And so all of a sudden, I was like the social media person for the fun run. I don't run, but I could do the Facebook and the Instagram. So I just did that, and got to know people through that. And then so volunteering, I'd say, is a good way too, because you get so much out of it and meet all sorts of people from all walks of life. I have to say, with the choir, pretty much all of us were expats. So and that was at the London Hotel. It still is at the London Hotel, I think. It's the Balmain and Roselle pub choir. Just for that little plug.
Go and join all the expats and the pub choir and have loads of pints, and that's
so much fun.
Oh, that
I miss that, actually.
More you say it, I feel like that's very.
I want to go there now and join the choir. I want to do choiring things.
Do
it.
Choiry things. Yeah.
Do it. It's so good for your mental health as well. I think it must be all the breathing, and then all the kind of the adrenaline from singing your favourite songs. It's
See, I can do that one. See, you know that one. You know the one, right?
It's a shame you're so far from Balmain. It's a real shame.
It'd be quite interesting, but we find that quite a lot of our followers have met, they've made friends with other people through Instagram and other social media platforms, and it would be really interesting to hear if you've kind of had a similar experience at all, discovering other expats who are also living nearby, and what does that look like when you're meeting up with an Instagram person that you've never met before, essentially.
Yeah, I have. I've got some really good friends that I met via Instagram. I think it just kind of came from in the first instance when we first got here. I documented a lot on Instagram about moving over, as lots of people do, and found it like a really great way of sharing what we were doing with our families back home. And so I think I kind of found a few people and got found the other way around. One person, Pamela. Hello, Pamela. Hopefully she'll listen to this. She contacted me, and she was a little bit kind of like, I know this might be a bit weird, but I've been following your journey, and we're doing the same move. And so she kind of connected, and then as soon as she moved over here, we met up for a coffee. It's that coffee meeting again. And she was from South London, I think Crystal Palace, and we just got chatting. She knew people in Brighton, you know, da 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 da. Our kids were the same age, but pretty much exactly the same age. And so we met up, and we're really good friends. We've been on lots of lovely, holidays and outings and restaurants and things. And another family from Brighton, a friend of a friend knew each other, but we then met via Instagram. So that was, it's been really lovely. It's been really nice to be able to kind of share those ups and downs, and, to have someone in the same position. So I would definitely say if someone reaches out to you via good old Insta, it's well worth meeting up.
And I was going to say,
Go on.
I was going to say, actually, like, just touching on that. It has sounded pretty good so far, but what are some of the challenges you've found about moving over?
I suppose for me that the main challenge has been homesickness, which is, guess, what everyone talks about. In the beginning, I think I always found like my sense of humour wasn't appreciated. I don't know whether if you had that.
Oh, yes, hand up here. I get that all the time.
I think
Even
it's
still now I get it.
yeah.
Like, I
I
have to
think
be. I have to be very conscious still. I think the way I talk with people, like as Australians, and talking about, not with Brits, obviously, but yeah, sometimes I do.
I think there's an element of sarcasm in the English like way of presenting that is a little bit can sometimes come across a bit odd in an Aussie situation, because Aussies is pretty much lay it all out, whereas kind of there'll be maybe hints of sarcasm scattered throughout something, and it'll kind of maybe just sail over in some occasions. So there is, look, I love both sides of it. I really do. I think it's great just to get to the point and have a real this is how it is kind of conversation. But I also enjoy the English kind of humour as well. And I think there's nothing better than like a really good English comedy, like Fawlty Towers, Hand Up, love it.
So I guess that's where I get a bit confused, because I kind of feel like it's not as if Australians haven't had lots of, cultural humour from the UK or from Europe. So I just sometimes find that I say something and then I think, oh God, no, they didn't get that. Or not they didn't get it, they just didn't like it. So
Sorry, go on.
I've got used to it, and maybe I have tempered myself a little bit, or maybe I've just, over the years just become a bit more Australian. I don't know.
I find that I've had to sort of tone it down a little bit. Like, see, you've said to me so many times before, you're like, Annie, you sound like you're being really rude. And I'm like, no, I'm laughing at myself. Like, I think it's really funny. But he's like, no one's going to get that. And I'm like,
no.
Oh, okay.
People, just depending on the situation. It can play out kind of a bit differently. So.
Yes. And then I guess with the homesickness, I've always thought, well, it's only a day away. If I need to go home, obviously money, but if I need to really go home, I'll be a day away. And then obviously COVID happened. And that was the biggest struggle, not being able to go home for that length of time. That was just a real oh my God, we really are on the other side of the world and we really don't have any control. That was really hard.
And I think all expats felt exactly the same. We all felt very trapped here, that, none of us could leave. And especially a lot of expats, if they did leave, then they weren't going to get back in, because of how strict it was. And so did it make you sort of reevaluate if you wanted to stay in Australia, or were you like, I accept that what's going on right now, and I'll just deal with it? Or were you like, this is making me quite angry, I want to get out of here?
Yeah, I think I've been through all of those emotions, actually. I lost my granddad during the pandemic, and I couldn't get back for his funeral, which was, I know, something that so many people struggled with. And also, as my mum said, in some countries, you could be in the same country and you still couldn't go to the funeral. So, I appreciate that it's something that lots of people had to deal with, whether or not they lived in another country. But that made me very angry, very, very angry. And it took a long time for me to kind of come to terms with that. And so at that point, I was like, that's it. We're going, real kind of knee-jerk, reaction to, wanting to be home. But I think since then, we have been home, and that was wonderful. We've been home, and we had Christmas, not the Christmas just gone, the one before. We had back in the UK, and we just saw every member of family, as many friends as possible. We had like the best time. But coming back, I felt like, okay, I'm all right with coming back. It was just what we need. We just needed that injection of family and Englishness.
Because you went on the first flight out, didn't you? So the
That's
first
right.
official flight out of Australia to the UK. What was that like?
Yeah.
I felt like it must have been such a huge sort of moment. And
Oh, it was incredible. And I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. I was sitting on the tarmac, I was like, this isn't going to happen. This really isn't. Until we landed, I just didn't feel safe in celebrating at all. But yeah, that was a real wonderful moment. And also, we were in Darwin, which is such a bizarre place to be, that it all just kind of felt like it was meant to be. We were in Darwin, we were stuck in Darwin actually, and suddenly the flights opened up, and we were like, okay, this is it. We're supposed to be on this flight. So yeah, it was wonderful.
so exciting. And I remember so when your kids went to England, how did they find it? Because I remember in the article, what their thoughts were about it. Do you want to describe like how they found it being, especially like going to London after living in
Oh my
Australia?
gosh. Yeah, they couldn't believe it. I mean, we were there at Christmas. So again, going to London, to Oxford Street, Christmas week. We came out of the underground, and they hadn't been on the underground. Had they been on the underground? I can't remember whether they'd been on the underground before, but they hadn't been for a long time. And they just came out of the steps. Do you remember where the big top shop on Oxford Circus used to be? We kind of came out of there and just like emerged into this like
So many people.
wonderland. Scary. They were scared. They were actually scared. There were so many people. They were like, I don't like this. Yeah, it was pretty wild. It really was. And I suppose also we had been in a very, we've been in Darwin, so it had been the comparison was just out there. It was freezing as well, freezing cold. And, oh my God, it's freezing. So yes, it was a big shock.
And I think that's quite amazing, though, that you said that, because I find that even when I go back, even now, like I'll come back to Australia and it will take me a bit of time to get back into Australia, like the Australian sort of way of life. And I'll probably spend like the first couple of weeks, maybe even a month, just having like the holiday blues and being like, oh, I really miss it. And,
Yeah.
and then after about a month or two, I'm like, okay, yeah. But like, for me, it's a much better way of life to be living here than it would be back there. But the fact was that your first time going back?
It's actually our second time. We went back 18 months after moving for the first time for my sister-in-law's wedding. And that was, wonderful. And it wasn't real life, you only kind of go back and you see everyone. It's almost like you're a celebrity. And you've got, you've got all the tales to tell. It feels like their life stayed the same, and you're the one that's had all this kind of adventure and everything else, and everyone's so pleased to see you. And I guess a lot that we hear is that, you go back and you kind of feel like, oh, I've missed out on all these get-togethers, and then people say, oh no, I haven't seen that person for over a year anyway, or we've only got together because you're here. And actually you then realise the reality is people's lives are busy. And, you kind of feel like you're missing out on so much. But in reality, people don't get together as much as you think, or you're not missing out on as much as you think. Obviously, you are, But I might like to make myself feel better by saying that, they don't see each other.
Annie was, when we went back, I mean, we had the same thing, and like we were over there Annie was going over and seeing her friends, and it was like, oh, I've missed out on all these things, and then her friends would say, oh, no, we haven't really got together, right?
Yeah, that's right. Like, and then like when I would go back, you'd have like 3 weeks of like the best times ever. Just exactly what you're saying, Emma. Is like you just feel like you're a little bit of a celebrity, and all your friends get together, and you have like the best time, and you're packing in like probably 6 months or a year's worth of visits from everyone within 3 weeks. So it's amazing, and then you get back to Australia, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just get back to normal life again. And when we moved over there, we saw our friends like probably like twice or something in 6 months, and I'd seen them more in that 3 weeks away. So I was like, okay, yeah, now I'm being reminded what real life is like.
I think it's because people make time, like they actively make time. If you're just on a short visit, that all becomes a priority. But
Right.
if not, it kind of like, you could be visited anytime. So maybe that making time thing is less important.
Also, in London especially, everyone books up so far in advance. From what I remember, you'd be like, what are you doing next weekend? They'd be like, oh, I booked up for 6 weeks. And you're like, what? Like, okay.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? And so it is really different. And I have to say also that when we were back in the UK, we'd never drive any further than an hour for a weekend. It would be like, I'm going to drive an hour. Whew, that's enough. Whereas here, people tend to drive further, and it's just different, isn't it? Just different.
Very different.
Well, I just got to jump in there because the traffic in Southeast England is like just bananas. Like, honestly, just to drive like 20, 30 Ks is like 2 hours. Like, it's just nuts. It really is just crazy.
Yeah. Brighton to Heathrow, Gatwick. Whole nother world.
I remember it well.
25, hey? And so it'd be really interesting to find out about your experience in Sydney and what led you to Darwin. How did you end up there, and how did that come about?
Well, we love Sydney. We had a really great experience living there, made some really great friends, loved the school, had an amazing job. And then COVID happened, and then my husband got made redundant. So that was 2020, and they closed the office. And so we were again at a bit of a crossroads. We were like, well, ordinarily, had Kieran been made redundant in normal times, perhaps we would have gone home, but we couldn't go home. So we were a bit kind of like, oh, what do we do? We could go home, but we'd have to go home for forever. That kind of, we couldn't really, it had to be a proper line in the sand decision. So at the time, obviously, things were horrendous in the UK and Europe in comparison to Australia. And all of our family and friends were like, you would be crazy to come back. You're safe there. And as much as my mum and Kieran's mum and everyone, would love to see us home one day, they were like, you're safe there, stay there. And so we thought, okay, we should. And then, as you know, Sydney's incredibly expensive to live, incredibly expensive to live. And we decided that we should go and see the rest of Australia. So we just bought a caravan, moved out of our rental. I gave up my job, which really made me cry because I absolutely love my job. And pulled the kids out of school. And decided that while the borders were kind of open between some of Australia, that we should get out while we could. So we packed up, put our stuff in storage, gave our cat, she's gone, to a friend, and went away for what was supposed to be 6 months. And we didn't have a caravan because the actual waiting time for a caravan during COVID was so long, but we had one ordered. So we just had a tent for the first 6 weeks, which was, I am not a camper, and we'd never really done it.
But we just 5-star to the 1,000-star luck.
Did you realise you're not a camper since, or did you realise you weren't a camper before you decided?
Do you know what? It was just brilliant. It was brilliant. Yeah, it was a nightmare, but it was brilliant. It was all those things. It was a great experience. It was brilliant for the kids. But when we then got the caravan, it was like, woo! We are in a luxury penthouse.
Wow.
So we picked up the caravan in Canberra about 6 weeks later and decided to get on our way and try and get over a border before the borders closed. So we weren't able to go to Victoria at that point because they were shut down. So we kind of skipped over the border and got into South Australia and thought that we'd spend, 6 months maybe doing South Australia, going to Uluru, and then go back to Sydney and see what happens. But everything just went a bit crazy. Within 6 months, we were really enjoying it. We loved it. It was just such a great way of life that we thought, well, look, there's nothing to actually take us back to Sydney right now. So let's kind of carry on. And WA opened their borders and we thought, let's just go to WA. So we went to WA. WA then closed their borders. So we were then there. And we just travelled all the way up the coast, all the way up the west coast, and just explored these incredible places that we'd never even heard of. We a lot of the kind of doing the lap is very much about kind of ticking things off the list, and we definitely did that. And with the kids, we really wanted them to see, all the wildlife. We wanted them to see the Aboriginal sites. Obviously, Uluru was number one on our list, and it was as fabulous and spiritual as you can imagine, and just wanted to be outside and do that type of thing while we could. And again, not knowing how long we're going to be in Australia, we just thought this is the opportunity. So we carried on going and just had the best time. We just met the best people, the most amazing families, lots of expats. Who just took the opportunity too. And we just had a brilliant time. Simple life, slow, very different to our Sydney life.
I've got a couple little questions in the back of my mind. I'm sure you've got a bunch as well. The first two that come to my mind is, first of all, what happened with the kids' schooling, kind of while you're doing this? And then the second part is, how good does Australia do the outdoors? If it's something we do well, we know what we're doing with a good campsite, we come prepared. We do come prepared. We don't mess around. We do it well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it is so awesome. The campsites are amazing. They're like holiday parks. We did a real mix of, big four caravan parks, which are like the Butlins of, I don't know. They're like, they've got the slides, they've got the swimming pools, they've got it all going on. And then we also did kind of, parking behind some rocks on the side of a gravel road. We did a lot of that too. And all of them have their place. All of them are brilliant, especially if you're traveling with kids, because, you do want your kids to have a bit more of a social life and a connection, as do the adults, actually. And so meeting up with other families was just a real great part of doing it all. And going on to schooling, we actually did Sydney distance education school. So we signed up and they sent a term's worth of work to a nominated post office. So we'd get to a post office and we'd go and pick it up. It'd be like great big huge envelopes of work. And we would have to do the work with the kids, kind of help them do the work. And you'd have to scan it and then upload it to a portal, and then they'd give you feedback.
Wow,
So
that's really cool.
Wow, I didn't even realise
Yeah.
that was a thing.
Neither did I.
Wow.
No,
Yeah.
And how did you prepare for this trip? Because it feels like a really big trip to plan for, even if it was just 6 months. Like, how do you know, what to pack and what not to pack? Is there any tips you would say to someone who's thinking about doing that big lap around Australia? Like, what are your main tips of what to do and what not to do?
There are some amazing resources, especially Facebook groups. So Traveling Australia with Kids is one of them. Really, really fantastic. like loads of people who are either on the lap or planning for the lap or, have been all sharing their kind of information. Like there's some really good threads about what's the one thing that you wish you'd taken that you didn't, and there's like all things like that. Loads of discussion about coffee. Did you take your coffee machine? Did you? So all the, there's real priorities there.
It's got them in order, I can see, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Also all those kind of YouTubers like Trip in a Van, they are amazing. They really do. They have resources that you can download from their website. Their videos are a really good watch. And then just like other families. So yeah, on the way we just met other families, and also my husband, get one of them.
Oh.
He was made redundant and he didn't have anything to do. So he just researched the heck out of it, and spreadsheet. He loves a spreadsheet. He just, really researched everything. He had it down pat. I just got in the car.
Sounds like he took on a new role, and his new job was commander of the trip.
That's right.
And did you continue on with any work while you were away for that longer time, or were you guys just literally like, we're just going to focus on the travel?
Yeah, no, we just focused on the travel. We really wanted to kind of spend time with the kids, and we were really lucky because of the redundancy that we were able to do that. And, we gave up our rental, so we didn't have any massive outgoings. And towards the end of the trip, I made a connection with my old company that I was working for in Sydney, and I wrote a few blogs for them. And I now work for them again. So that was a real great outcome. I would just say, just do it. Just do it. No regrets. It was awesome.
So, and I remember seeing that you did say that you thought traveling around Australia would be like Wolf Creek meets Crocodile Dundee.
Were there any Wolf Creek places? Like, is there anywhere you'd say this is like Ridgy Didge, the most Wolf Creekish place in Australia?
Do you know what? I can't. There were some. What do you call them? That like this. You get this. The roadhouse. There were roadhouses that you'd kind of go into. So we drove across the Nullarbor, so from South Australia to WA. That is a long stretch, man. And the only thing, I don't know, it's the longest straight road, isn't it? The longest road.
Wow.
Can't remember the facts.
It's actually like 3 days though, right?
3 days. Yeah. So some of those roadhouses, you kind of feel a bit like, ooh, is there anyone here? It's a bit kind of creepy. And then we kind of camped on a cliff top, which is free camping, and lots of people do it. It's called the Burda Cliffs. And it's where the Great Australian Bight is. So, oh my God, the view is just incredible. But when you're camping in your caravan at the top of the cliff, there is that real kind of like, oh my God, who else is here? Would anyone hear me scream? No. There is that fear that you just don't know what's going to happen. And then that whole fear of breaking down and having to walk across,
Well, that does happen a lot, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
out
Oh
there
my
without
God, you hit
fuel
the
or
hot.
water.
When I did Darwin to Uluru when I was a backpacker, but that was going back to 2006, and everyone was telling us this horror stories, and they were like, "Don't stop for anyone, just keep driving." And I was like, "Oh my God, like what do you do?"
So we did break down. So we had car trouble in Kununurra at the top of WA, and we had the car fixed for a month. We were there, which was amazing, but it was waiting for the car. And then we had to cross the border we wanted to cross the border into the NT. And as we crossed the border into the middle of nowhere, the car broke down again.
Oh.
And our engine just smoked, and we were going nowhere. So we just had to sit on the side of the road and wait for someone to come along. Because
God. How long did you wait?
we waited for quite a while, and we managed to call. We had an emergency phone, a satellite phone, because we didn't have any signal, and we managed to call the local garage, but they were like, there's no one around that can help you. And so we just kind of waited for a while to see whether or not anyone could kind of help us jump the car or help us do something. And this lovely, lovely guy, there are so many good people on the road. Like we didn't encounter anyone horrible or dodgy. We only met amazing people. This guy just stopped. He was traveling across the border to go and do something, and he saw us and he got out of his ute and he just got under the car. Like, he knew a bit about cars, and he just got under the car. He got dirty in the red dust, and he got, water out of his car. He did all sorts of things, and then he couldn't help us. But he said, when I get to the next town, I'll let them know you're here. He was really lovely. He got some tinnies out of his fridge, which was in the back of the ute.
Oh, nice.
Gave us some cold tinnies, and he gave us his phone number. I was like, if I can help or anything. Like, he was so nice. And eventually, I think at 1 a.m, a tow truck arrived. We got towed to Catherine, and we had to sleep the night in our caravan, thank God, in the tow yard.
Wow.
Because nowhere was open. But part of the adventure.
Is that the most memorable story you have on that trip, or have you got something that kind of outbeats that
Ooh,
one?
what's the top story?
Oh, it probably is all around our engine blowing up. It probably is all about the engine blowing up and all about, the car troubles we had. We basically got stuck in Darwin for about 3 months because the car was a Jeep. And because of COVID...
See, Annie wants a Jeep. She's trying to talk me into a Jeep at the moment.
Because of the Jeep being in America, and there were no engines in Australia because of COVID, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We had to wait about 3 months, and eventually we ended up just leaving because we left our caravan, we left our car, we went to the UK for Christmas, we came back, it still wasn't ready. Oh. And then we decided to fly over to Far North Queensland, get a motorhome, and finish the rest of the trip.
Oh,
we've got it back recently. It was left in storage, and the car finally got fixed, and it got delivered to us here in WA in Margaret River.
Wow!
Gosh,
what a story!
It was a nightmare.
What was your favourite place you visited on the Big Lap?
I think it has to be. It's either Gibb River Road. We did the Gibb River Road for 3 weeks, where we camped along there and visited all the gorges and had the best time. No mobile phone service, no supermarket, no nothing. It was incredible. Wow. Or Carragini, which we'd never heard of.
I've never heard of it either.
I've never heard of it. Where is it?
Neither have I heard of Gibbs, though. I haven't heard of either of these.
Oh my goodness. The Kimberleys is just absolutely phenomenal. And we'd never even heard of it. We were just like, where? We weren't planning on going there. And that's the great thing about meeting other families on the road. You meet other people and they're going there, so you tag along. It's just really nice, really, really nice. Carragini has the most amazing. Oh my goodness, you'd have an absolute brilliant time.
Is that the really cool little like swimming holes in the yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, God, that sounds amazing.
So that was amazing. Yeah, it was all amazing. Broome, all of those places. We had an amazing time in Darwin as well, actually, but it was just kind of marred by the car trouble. But in the end, we just thought, sod it, let's just leave it there.
So if anyone's listening and they want to do the Big Lap of Australia, tell us 5 things that they need to do in order to have like a stress-free trip.
Do a towing course. If you're going to have a caravan, do a towing course, which you can do. Well, we did ours in Sydney. We'd never towed anything, so it was like, how do we tow a caravan? And within that, learn how to reverse a caravan, because it's so embarrassing when you get to a campsite and everyone is watching you and you can't reverse it into the spot.
It's like pressure, no pressure.
Be okay with snakes and cane toads and creepy things, because they are everywhere, but they're probably not going to come anywhere near you. So
I think that's the thing that a lot of people are scared about when they're coming over to Australia, is the poisonous and dangerous animals that are
Yeah.
around. Have you found that you've just got used to it now, or how do you feel about that now?
There's a redback in our garage at the moment, so I'm a bit nervous about that. But on the trip, we honestly didn't see very much at all, and we thought we would see loads, especially being in the outback, but we didn't. And I don't think I'll ever get used to the idea of there were signs on the toilet saying, make sure you put the lid down, because if you don't put the lid down, the frogs will be in there, and with frogs come snakes.
Oh my God!
So
Could you imagine?
Always put the lid down on a toilet when it's in the bush. Definitely.
I
Yes.
always panic about that when you go hiking and that, and then you open up the.
You have to have a look around the lid, because the spiders, they love getting down.
yeah.
Oh yes.
So I think being prepared to it'll be okay. The chances are you won't see any at all. Toilets was one of my big problems. I was always a bit like, oh, I don't want to go to the public toilet. I don't want to go to that toilet. But actually, they were all fine, pretty much, give or take.
Yeah.
Google Maps isn't always your friend. That's another tip. Make sure you've got an actual old school map, because
how about one of those downloadable maps, like I think called Maps.me or something?
yes, we didn't have that. We should have had that. So that, and get a satellite phone. Is that 5?
That's 5.
So I didn't count. Did you?
Sounds good though.
Sounds pretty
They
good.
sound. Those are the top ones. I'd do all of those.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to talk about where you are now. So where you're not living in Sydney now, then?
No. So we finished our lap. We did some of Far North Queensland, which was awesome, and we did some of the Sunshine Coast, and the floods started, and we were a bit we had to kind of cut it short a bit because there was lots of flooding, and we were just like, oh, maybe it's time. Yeah. So we then came back to Sydney, and we quickly realised that it wasn't for us anymore.
Why is that? What was changed? What had changed?
I guess twofold, really. It seemed so busy. It was so busy in comparison to all the places we've been. The houses were so expensive. We couldn't get anything with any outside space without us both getting full-time mega jobs. That's what it felt like. I'm sure we could have lived somewhere that wasn't Balmain and done that, but that's where all our friends were. So we were like, why are we moving back to Sydney to then not live near our friends? We might as well live somewhere else where we can get lots of space, not work to live. Yeah. And we just seen so many amazing places in WA. I just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe our eyes, basically. And we just decided that we just wanted a bit more of a simple life. So we kind of took the plunge, and unlike the advice I kind of gave before, which was about not buying anywhere, we decided that we wanted to move to Margaret River. So Margaret River we absolutely loved when we were on our trip. We all loved it when we kind of talked about the places that we could live, although we loved the Kimberleys, we knew we couldn't live there. But the place that we all thought we could live was down in the southwest of WA. And so Margaret River, Bustleton, that type of area we were looking at. And we just fell in love with it. And I think it might be because it does actually feel a bit more English. It's really very seasonal. It really has got that kind of, winter was bloody freezing, and summer's beautiful, and it's got seasons. And I think we really like that. And yeah, just beautiful space. It's a gorgeous place. And we decided to give it a go. And I was lucky enough to be able to work from home over here, and I work in wine. So the wine region here is
no better place to be then, right?
No better place to be. And we've decided to kind of have a fresh start over here. But because of the rental market, which is horrendous, we had to buy somewhere, which sounds ridiculous, but we honestly just didn't really have much choice. So we bought somewhere. We've got fruit trees. We've got like veggie patch, like all the things that we've never had before. We've never had a garden before in the UK or here. So it's just a different life, a very different kind of slower nature life. Don't get me wrong, the children are just on their screens the whole time, but I'm in the garden.
Were there any other places that you sort of had on your list that you were going to consider to move to? Or was it just like, no, Margaret River's our place, that's where we want to go?
It really was. Margaret River was our place. I think we probably would have really liked places in Queensland. We really loved the Sunshine Coast. We really liked it over there, but we didn't spend anywhere near as much time or as much kind of quality time there as we did in the southwest. So I think that made a difference. We also have a family over here that we met on the trip who live in Busselton, which is about half an hour drive away. They ended up moving down here, and so that again was like another kind of, we know someone and they were loving it, and so we thought we would give it a go.
And so do you look back, like you've obviously been through such a big journey now, if you think about it, like you've gone from Brighton to Sydney to doing a big lap to now you're in Margaret River, like how it's unfolded is quite incredible, really, and how different your life must be now to how it was, especially in Brighton as well. Is there anything that you really miss about living in Brighton, or are you kind of feeling like Margaret River is now my home and this is where we're going to be?
I think it's too soon to say. We've only been here about 6 months, and it hasn't been anywhere near as easy making connections as it was in Sydney. Like we know a few people, but I could count them on one hand. It's more difficult. I think it doesn't help that I work from home, so I don't have that work thing. My husband's looking after our youngest at the moment, so he's not working either. So we don't have that kind of natural network. And school is actually, my eldest is 11, and he just gets on his bike and he cycles up the road and cycles back. He doesn't need us to kind of go to the school gates. Yeah. So it's just a different scenario to the one that we had in Sydney when we arrived. So I think it's just going to take longer. And I think being a country town, do I call it that? A country town? Yeah. I think it's going to be just more difficult to break through. We're not local. We're not the locals, you know.
Do you find that is there a bit of a divide there? Because we have noticed this in our previous town where we lived. So we used to live in Agnes Water, which I don't know if you went there, but
we did, yeah.
It's a tiny little beach town, about 5 hours north of Noosa in Queensland. And we found with that town, like the sort of before COVID and after COVID.
Very, very different story. And I think the town itself, like, you know, kind of ended up being divided into people who had arrived recently versus people who had been there for some time and felt like they were really the original kind of custodians of the place. So there was this kind of, it's interesting dynamic that emerged after COVID that kind of changed.
And I think a lot of towns are seeing that now. I'm probably seeing it all over the world, to be honest. Like all these more regional places are being changing quite dramatically, much more than they would have done prior COVID, because so many people are now moving there away from the cities. And
that's right.
Do you get a sense that there might be, you know, it might be a bit more difficult to break into that local community a bit more where you are?
It feels like that. It definitely feels that way. I think I'm going to have to say yes to a lot of things if I ever get invited.
Any coffee, anywhere, anytime.
Anyone,
2, 3, 4 times a week, 5 times a week.
I have looked to see if there's a pub choir and there isn't one, so that's a bit sad. Maybe
one. There you go.
Maybe that's the answer. So volunteering is my next thought. Right, I'm going to volunteer. They've got a readers and writers festival here, so I've put my name down to kind of volunteer there. And Farron, my 11-year-old, has made friends with a lovely boy, and his mum's a winemaker. So
there you go.
He gets 10 out of 10 for that.
You get little samples to take home as well after they had the little play date. To come home with a few clean skins to sample, yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's just going to take longer. It's going to take time, and I'm okay with that. Having done it before, I think I'm okay with it.
I think it's just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, isn't it?
And that's the lesson I think, is like really just go and live your life, take chances, go and do everything. Because, there's nothing worse than kind of not, doing something and taking that chance that you look back and go, geez, I wish I'd done that.
Absolutely. And I think probably a lot of people are thinking that right now, who are sort of deciding whether to make that leap and move to Australia. And they're probably wondering, should I do it? Should I not? Am I risking everything? Am I going to have to come back and start all over again? And
which segues nicely into the question I was going to ask earlier. Do you have any tips for people who are thinking of moving to Australia?
Oh, I think our journey over here was so much easier because we came with a company. I recognise that from listening, reading some of your posts on your Londoner and Sydney site. It's really hard to get a visa and it's really difficult. So my number one tip would be to find someone that's going to sponsor you or that's going to make that journey easy. I think also just that anything can happen. I think we've been shown that with the crazy world that we live in. If you don't take the chance now, when are will you ever have that chance again? So I would always say, take every opportunity that comes your way. If you have the chance to do it. I think, what else? I don't know. I don't regret it at all. Don't regret moving over here. I think we've had an amazing, amazing 6 years. We've really been so lucky. If I kind of think about, if we were back in the UK, the last few years would have been totally different for us. So different. We had a freedom that most people didn't have. So I will always be really grateful for that. And, when it isn't crazy COVID time, going back to the UK or wherever you are from is only a day away. So, yeah.
I think that's a good thing just to remember, even though flights are not cheap right now, but it is only a day away. It's not, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I think I'm trying to say it's close and it's not far. It's all achievable. Yes. Get out there and do it. Enjoy. Absolutely. Live life.
You totally inspired me to that's our doggy. You've totally inspired me to definitely want to get out and volunteer more, because there's no better thing to do than to help people. So
yeah, true that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely could see you taking amazing photos and video in Carragini. So I think you need to go there next.
Definitely. I've not been up that way. Oh, I did live in Margaret River at one point. Just thought I'd leave you that one when I did my fruit picking work.
Well, that's
so random.
Backpacking and do your working holiday visa. I did 3 months dreaded fruit picking work, and I worked on all those vineyards in Margaret River, and not good memories, to be honest. But I'd love to go back to Margaret River. I really want to see what it looks like now, because it's been such a long time.
I'd be well up for that.
I remember the beaches being really beautiful there.
It is stunning. It's really, really, really beautiful. So yeah, anytime I feel kind of like, what are we doing? I just kind of go to the ocean and realise that that's what we're doing.
That's another good thing Australia does well, is the sea. Thank you very much. You do the sea very well.
And it's good to remind yourself of doing things like that. Like I always find when we go back to Sydney, I always have to go and see, always have to film the Harbour Bridge whenever we drive over it. And I always have to go and see the Opera House every single time, because those two places are the best reminder for me that I'm like, oh my God, I live in this country and I can see this. And this is like, bam, it just reminds me every time how lucky I am to live over here. So having those little special places to remind yourself of, why you're here is really, really important. So, but I'd like to thank you for coming on our podcast today, Emma. It's so
thank you, Emma.
Nice to get all your insights from your journey you've had so far.
Thank you for having me. And sorry. And for anyone that doesn't know, we are on different time zones, which meant that I messed up our last interview.
We were meant to catch up before Christmas, weren't we?
It's very easy to do. I mean, I get mixed up with
Australia, isn't it? All different. It's like living in it's like 5 separate countries all in one, isn't it? All different time zones. So if you guys want to continue following Emma's journey, which I very, very much highly recommend, you can follow her on Instagram, which is called We're Here, which is about WEIR and then HERE. So make sure you follow Emma's journey, and can't wait to see what happens next.
Tell us what's next.
Be next year.
Yeah. Do another lap.
lap number 2 could be. Who knows? Who knows?
Oh,
Definitely,
I would do it again.
Brilliant.
I really would do it again.
Aw. Well, thanks very much, Emma. And
Thank you.
just to remind you guys to like and subscribe, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you're watching us on YouTube, and you can watch us on Spotify as well, because this is a video podcast, just to remind you all. And we will be back very soon for more from us at the Expat Reality Podcast.
Yes, and be good to you. Take care, and we shall see you on the next run. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.